Most towns die slowly. The mine runs dry and people leave one family at a time. The railroad bypasses them, and the businesses close one by one over a decade. The population ages out and the young people don't come back, and eventually there's nobody left to keep the lights on. That is not what happened to these towns. These towns were here on a Tuesday, gone by Wednesday. No gradual decline, no years of warning, no time to prepare, to grieve, to say goodbye to the place that raised you. Something happened, fast, and when it was over, the town was over. These are 12 American towns that disappeared overnight with no warning given. And number one is a town where the disappearance was so complete, so sudden, and so deliberately concealed by the people responsible that the full story didn't come out for decades. Number 12, Nelson, Illinois. Nelson was a farming community in Carroll County, Illinois. A post office, a grain elevator, a church, a school. The kind of town that existed in hundreds of identical versions across the Midwest in the early 20th century. Unremarkable in every way except to the people who lived there. In 1939, the Army Corps of Engineers arrived. The Mississippi River Flood Control Program required a series of locks and dams along the upper Mississippi. Lock and dam number 13 needed a reservoir. The reservoir needed land. The land Nelson was sitting on was exactly where the water needed to go. Residents received notices, the government assessed their properties, paid the assessed values, and informed them of the date by which they needed to be gone. There was no negotiation. There was no appeal process that changed outcomes. There was a date, and after that date, the water would ride. The families of Nelson packed what they could carry and left. The buildings were not demolished before the flooding. The water came up and took them. In dry years, when the reservoir level drops, the foundations of Nelson emerge from the silt, concrete pads, the outline of a street, the ghost of a grain elevator base, a town that went under in 1939 and surfaces occasionally, like a memory the river hasn't finished with. The families who left scattered across the Midwest. No monument marks where Nelson was. The lock and dam that required its removal is still operating. The Mississippi doesn't remember what it covered. Number 11, Lewiston, Tennessee. In 1943, the Tennessee Valley Authority needed another reservoir. It always needed another reservoir. The hydroelectric program that was remaking the Tennessee River Valley required water, and water required land, and land meant towns. Lewiston was in the path of Norris Lake. The community had existed since before the Civil War. It had a post office, schools, several churches, and a population of several hundred families who had been farming the same land for generations. Some families had been there long enough that their ancestors were buried in the community cemetery. The TVA sent the notices, the assessed values were paid, the date was set. Before the water came, the TVA required the cemeteries to be relocated. Every grave was exhumed. Everybody moved to higher ground. Families gathered to watch their ancestors dug up and reburied on land that wasn't theirs, in a community that no longer existed, for a project they had not chosen. The water came up in 1943. Lewiston went under. Today, Lewiston sits beneath Norris Lake, one of dozens of communities the TVA flooded to build its hydroelectric system. The name survives in Lewiston Point, a peninsula that juts into the lake above where the town used to be. People fish there on weekends. Below their boats, somewhere in the silt, are the foundations of a town that was removed to make a lake that became a recreational amenity for people who never knew what them was underneath. Number 10, Swift Trail Junction, Arizona. This one is not a story about water. Swift Trail Junction was a small service community in Graham County, Arizona, a crossroads settlement that existed to serve travelers heading into the Pinaleno Mountains. A gas station, a small store, a handful of permanent residents. The kind of place that exists because of its location and has no reason to exist without it. In the 1960s, the highway was realigned, not bypassed. Realigned. The road itself was moved. A new routing was engineered that did not pass through the junction. The traffic that had sustained the settlement's businesses did not slow down or reduce. It simply stopped coming because the road it had been traveling no longer went that way. The gas station had no customers. The store had no customers. The residents who had built their livelihoods around the traffic had no livelihoods. Within a single season, Swift Trail Junction was empty. Not because anything dramatic happened, because the road moved and everything built on the assumption that it wouldn't move became instantly obsolete. There was no disaster, no flood, no government buyout. The road moved, the town ended, and the speed of it, the way a community can be rendered non-existent by an engineering decision made in an office by people who never visited it, is its own kind of violence. Number 9, Hudsonville Colony, Illinois. In 1920, a religious communal group called the House of David established a colony in Crawford County, Illinois, on land purchased for agricultural and communal living purposes. The House of David was a Christian sect founded in Michigan in 1903. Members lived communally, did not cut their hair, did not eat meat, and funded their operations through a combination of farming, manufacturing, and an extraordinarily successful traveling baseball team that barnstormed across the country playing exhibitions. The Hudsonville colony housed several dozen members at its peak. They built structures, farmed the land, and operated as a self-contained community according to their religious principles. Then the leadership in Michigan issued a directive. The colony was to be dissolved. Members were to consolidate at the main compound in Benton Harbor. The Illinois property was to be sold. The members complied. Within weeks of the directive, the colony was empty. Buildings locked, fields unharvested. A functioning community vacated on the instruction of a religious leader who had decided the land was no longer needed. The property sat vacant for years. The structures deteriorated. The fields were eventually sold to neighboring farmers. A community that disappeared not from external force but from internal decision, the kind of overnight erasure that comes when the authority that holds a community together withdraws it, and everyone follows because that is what they had agreed to do. Number 8, Mosier Colony, Oregon. Subscribe right now if this is what you watch for. New story every single week. Mosier Colony was a utopian agricultural settlement established in the Columbia River Gorge of Oregon in the late 19th century by a group of German immigrants who believed that cooperative farming on shared land could produce prosperity that individual farming could not. They were not entirely wrong. The colony functioned for several years. The land was productive. The communal model created efficiencies that individual farmers couldn't replicate. The settlement grew and attracted additional members. Then a single growing season failed. The Columbia River Gorge is subject to unusual and unpredictable weather patterns, temperature inversions, late frosts, wind events that don't follow regional norms. In one season, a combination of late frost and wind damage destroyed the colony's crops almost completely. The communal model that had created shared prosperity now created shared catastrophe. There were no individual reserves. Everyone had put everything into the communal operation, and the communal operation had nothing. The members dispersed within a single season. Some went to Portland, some returned to Germany, some moved to other agricultural communities in the region. The land was sold. Within 1 year of the crop failure, Mosier Colony did not exist. The structures remained for a time before being absorbed into neighboring farms or falling apart. The cooperative model that had seemed so promising produced in the end a shared vulnerability that a single bad year could erase completely. Number 7, Spring Hill, Kansas. In 1886, a railroad company announced a new line through eastern Kansas. The route, as announced, passed directly through Spring Hill. The town immediately began preparing for the economic transformation that railroad access would bring. Land values rose. New businesses opened in anticipation of the traffic. Investors purchased lots. The town built infrastructure to receive the railroad. The railroad changed the route, not dramatically. The new line passed approximately 4 miles west of Spring Hill. 4 miles was enough. The railroad built a depot at the new point. A settlement grew around the depot, and the economic energy that Spring Hill had been preparing to receive went to the new settlement instead. The businesses that had opened in anticipation of the railroad had no customers. The investors who had purchased lots had land in a town that was not on the railroad. The infrastructure built to receive traffic received none. Spring Hill did not disappear completely. It survived in reduced form and exists today as a suburb of Kansas City. But the Spring Hill of 1886, the town that had positioned itself for transformation and received erasure instead, ceased to exist the day the railroad announced the route change. One announcement, 4 miles, and a town's entire future redirected to a point on a map that hadn't existed the year before. Number 6, Elwood, Indiana. Elwood, Indiana is still on the map. It still has residents. But the Elwood that existed on the morning of October 31st, 1918, was a different city than the one that existed by nightfall. Elwood in 1918 was an industrial city of 12,000 people built around the natural gas boom of the late 19th century and the manufacturing it had attracted. It had factories, a downtown commercial district, schools, and the full infrastructure of a prosperous mid-sized Indiana city. On October 31st, 1918, a fire broke out in the downtown commercial district. By the time it was contained, 4 full city blocks had burned to the ground. The fire destroyed the commercial heart of Elwood. The banks, the major retail establishments, the hotels, the businesses that employed a significant portion of the city's residents. The fire did not destroy Elwood. The city was rebuilt. It is still there. But the Elwood that existed before October 31st, 1918, the commercial ecosystem that had developed over 30 years, the businesses that had operated for decades, the downtown that had been the center of economic life for 12,000 people, that Elwood was gone by morning. Some businesses were rebuilt, others did not. The owners who had lost everything at 50 or 60 years old did not all have the capital or the energy to start again. The fire that burned for one night left a city that was never quite the same shape it had been before. Number 5, Saltaire, Utah. Saltaire was not a town in the traditional sense. It was something stranger and more specific. A resort built on the shores of the Great Salt Lake by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1893. Designed as a wholesome recreational destination for Mormon families in an era when wholesome recreational destinations were not easy to find. It was extraordinary. A Moorish-style pavilion built on pilings over the lake, with a bathhouse, a dance hall, a roller coaster, a carousel, and a beach where the density of the salt water made swimming effortless. At its peak, Saltaire drew 500,000 visitors a year. The train from Salt Lake City ran specifically to bring them. Then the lake began receding. The Great Salt Lake has no outlet. Its level is controlled entirely by the balance between inflow and evaporation. In dry years, it drops. In the early 20th century, it dropped enough that the resort's beach, which had been at the water's edge, became a flat of brine-soaked mud hundreds of feet from the water. A fire destroyed the original pavilion in 1925. A second Saltaire was built. The lake rose and fell. A flood in 1931 submerged the resort. It reopened. Attendance never recovered. The resort closed in 1958. A third Saltaire was built in 1981. The lake rose dramatically in the mid-1980s, flooding the new structure before it could establish itself. It has operated intermittently as a concert venue since then. 3 versions of the same resort, each destroyed by the same lake it was built to celebrate. A body of water that rises and falls on its own schedule, indifferent to what humans have built on its shores. 500,000 visitors a year, a train built specifically to carry them, and a lake that swallowed the destination 3 separate times without apology. Number 4. Lake City, Colorado. Lake City in 1876 was a silver mining town of 2,500 people in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, operating at altitude in a country so remote that supply runs required pack mule trains and the winters were severe enough to kill. What ended Lake City was not the mine and not the winter. It was a man named Alfred Packer. In the winter of 1873 to 74, before the town was formally established, but during the period of prospecting that preceded it. Packer led a group of 5 men through the San Juan Mountains in conditions that made the crossing nearly impossible. He emerged alone in the spring. The 5 men he had guided were eventually found dead. Packer was convicted of killing and cannibalizing them. The Packer case became one of the most notorious criminal cases in Colorado history, and it attached itself to the Lake City area with a permanence that no amount of silver could dislodge. The silver ran out in the 1890s and the population fell. But the combination of remoteness, brutal winters, exhausted ore, and the Packer Association created a reputation that made Lake City difficult to revive. Today, Lake City has around 400 permanent residents and a summer tourism economy built partly on the notoriety of the Packer case. The site where the bodies were found is marked. People visit. A town that survived a cannibal but not the mine running dry, and carries the association of the cannibal still, because history keeps whatever it finds most interesting, regardless of whether the town would have chosen a different story to be remembered by. Number 3. Independence, California. Independence, California sits in the Owens Valley on the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada, and it lost its population not to a natural disaster, not to a mine running dry, but to one of the most controversial water acquisitions in American history. The Owens Valley in the early 20th century was agricultural land. Farmers had built an irrigation system from the Owens River that turned the high desert valley into productive farmland. Communities had grown up around agriculture. Independence was the county seat of Inyo County, a functioning civic center for a thriving agricultural region. Then the city of Los Angeles began buying land. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, operating through agents who did not disclose who they were buying for, purchased farmland and water rights across the Owens Valley throughout the early 1900s. By the time the Los Angeles Aqueduct opened in 1913, the city owned enough of the valley's water rights to redirect the Owens River south to Los Angeles. The farms that had built the Owens Valley communities lost their water. Without water, agriculture ended. Without agriculture, the communities lost their economic foundation. Families left, businesses closed. Independence survived as a county seat with reduced population, but the Owens Valley that existed before Los Angeles arrived, the agricultural communities, the farms, the irrigation network, was taken apart by water right by a city that needed what the valley had and had the money and the agents to take it. Owens Lake, which had been an actual lake, dried up completely by 1926 once the aqueduct was operating. It became a dry lake bed of alkali dust that still creates some of the worst particulate air pollution in the United States on windy days. Los Angeles took the water. The valley took the dust, the communities took the loss. And the city that grew on Owens Valley water is now a megalopolis of 4 million people who have never heard of the farms it required to become what it is. Number 2, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. On May 31st, 1889, Johnstown, Pennsylvania was a prosperous industrial city of 30,000 people. By the evening of May 31st, 1889, over 2,200 of them were dead. The South Fork Dam, 14 miles upstream from Johnstown, had been poorly maintained by the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, an exclusive resort whose members included some of the wealthiest men in America, among them Andrew Carnegie and Andrew Mellon. Engineers had warned for years that the dam was inadequate. The warnings were noted and ignored. On the morning of May 31st. Heavy rains had been falling for 2 days. The dam began failing. By early afternoon, it was clear to the people at the dam that it would not hold. No warning was sent to Johnstown because the telegraph line was down and no other system existed. At 3:10 p.m., the dam failed. 20 million tons of water, a wall 40 feet high moving at 40 miles per hour, hit Johnstown 57 minutes later. The water carried everything upstream with it. Houses, trees, locomotives, 1,600 tons of barbed wire from a manufacturing plant. The debris pile that collected at a stone railroad bridge at the edge of town caught fire that night and burned for 3 days with people still trapped inside it. 2,209 people died. 99 entire families were wiped out. 400 children were killed. 1,600 homes were destroyed. The men whose negligence had maintained an inadequate dam, Carnegie, Mellon, and the other club members, were never held legally responsible. Not one was successfully sued. Not one faced criminal charges. The legal doctrine of the time treated the flood as an act of God. Johnstown rebuilt. It is still there, still in the same valley. But the city of May 30th, 1889. 30,000 people going about their lives on a Wednesday afternoon was gone by Wednesday evening, and the people whose failure caused it paid nothing. Number 1, Tulsa's Greenwood District, Oklahoma. On the morning of June 1st, 1921, the Greenwood District of Tulsa, Oklahoma was the wealthiest black community in the United States. It was called Black Wall Street. That name was not hyperbole. Greenwood had black-owned banks, black-owned law firms, black-owned hotel, black-owned theaters, black-owned schools, black-owned newspapers, black-owned medical offices. It had a self-contained economic ecosystem that had been built over 2 decades by a community that had been excluded from white Tulsa's economy and had responded by building its own. 35 blocks, 10,000 residents, 600 businesses. A level of concentrated black wealth that was, at that moment, unmatched anywhere in America. By the morning of June 2nd, 1921, it was gone. A white mob, some of whom had been deputized by the Tulsa city government, invaded Greenwood on the night of June 1st. They burned every building. They shot residents in the streets. Private aircraft, biplanes, flew over the neighborhood. Survivors reported being shot at from above. Official investigations conducted decades later confirmed that the aircraft were present. Whether shots were fired from them remains disputed. The official death toll was recorded as 36. Independent researchers and the 2001 Oklahoma State Commission that investigated the massacre estimated the actual death toll at between 100 and 300. The discrepancy exists because many bodies were never found, because mass graves were not investigated, and because in 1921 the deaths of black Tulsa residents were not a priority for official record-keeping. 10,000 people were left homeless overnight. 35 blocks of buildings were destroyed. Insurance claims were denied because the policies excluded riot damage. The city of Tulsa proposed to rezone the Greenwood land for industrial use immediately after the massacre, which would have prevented rebuilding. The community fought it and won. Greenwood rebuilt twice and was later destroyed again, not by a mob but by urban renewal, by the construction of Interstate 244, directly through the rebuilt district in the 1960s. By the same machinery of displacement that dismantled black communities across America under the name of progress. The Greenwood District today has a fraction of the businesses and residents it had in 1921. The rebuilt community that survived the massacre was dismantled by a highway. Black Wall Street was the wealthiest black community in America. It was destroyed in one night by a mob operating with the participation of the city government. The people responsible were never charged. The victims were never compensated. The official death toll undercounts the dead by a number that will never be precisely known. That is what overnight erasure looks like when it is not a flood, not a firme, not a mine running dry, when it is a decision made by people about which communities are allowed to exist and which are not. 12 towns, 12 different kinds of overnight. A dam that failed in 57 minutes, a fire that burned for one night, a road that moved 4 miles, a water acquisition completed in secret, a mob that burned 35 blocks before morning. Some of these erasures were accidents, some were negligent, Some were decisions made by people who knew exactly what they were doing and calculated that they would face no consequences. They were right. The towns are gone. The people who caused the worst of them faced nothing. And the communities left behind rebuilt when they could, scattered when they couldn't, and carried the memory of a place that was there on Tuesday and gone by Wednesday. Drop a comment below. Which one hit you hardest, and tell me what state you're from. Because every state has a version of this story, and I will find yours. Subscribe, new story every single week. And next week, we go to the towns that didn't disappear overnight. They were erased slowly, deliberately over decades, and the people responsible are still celebrated today.